Hey, we're live. Come on in. The water's fine. I think we have a few people already. I came a little bit early just for fun. Yeah, 10 minutes early. We have a few people here already. Hi, Ashley, Matthew, or Matt. Can you guys hear me? Let me know if my sound is okay. Woohoo! The whole crew is here. Nice. Thank you. Audio's good. Sweet. Yeah, we got some good emojis going. Ishwar, Josh, Angelo, Violet. Chad's in here somewhere too. Chadmin. And we added Grover. Nisargadatta's hanging out there too. My favorite's still Tezcatlipoca, though. Tezcatlipoca. If anyone doesn't know who Tezcatlipoca is, he's the older brother of Quetzalcoatl. He's a little less known, or a lot less known, because he's the god of the underworld, of darkness. But his name means smoking mirror, which he carries an onyx mirror, a polished onyx stone, which is a mirror, and he carries a sword. And you're lucky if you get the sword, because if you get the mirror, he'll show you your true nature. Yeah, he's a pretty powerful archetype, actually. So yeah, if anyone has questions, you can ask at any time. Hi there. Hi, Danielle. Banjojo. I love it. Do you play the banjo, Banjojo? Maria. Welcome. Hi. Hi, Cherry. Hey, Tony. Yo, 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 yo. What up? What up? Diego, what's up? Very badly. You play the banjojo. Banjojo plays the banjo very poorly. Not as bad as me, because I've never played it. So if I played the banjo, you'd need earplugs for sure. It would be ugly. I don't play anything really very well. I play. I have a keyboard and I know some basic notes, but I use synths when I make music. So the synth does most of the work. But I'm not really good with any other instruments. Keyboardist, cool. Yeah, I know like the really basics, like some notes and a few chords here and there. Frank Yang? No, it didn't happen. There was some glitch in the matrix. We didn't get in contact. We got in contact, but the date didn't work out. So maybe sometime in the future. Bassoon. That's cool. That's a low sound, isn't it? Low, big instrument. I like low sounds. How's everybody's week? Any interesting stories? Interesting events? Frank? Yeah, he is. He has a video out there called The Moment of Enlightenment, I think it's called, or something like that. It's about a year ago, maybe. It says first time caught on video, but he has a countdown and he shows like old clips of himself because he was vlogging for years. It's really good. It's a really good video if you haven't seen it. Trombone in terms of where it is on the scales. I see. Yeah. Oh, you're on the plane? Sweet. Where you headed, Diego? Life with Kyle. Hey, Kyle. Do you have a website called Life with Kyle? Microdosing Angelo? I don't recommend microdosing Angelo. He's pretty much good to go already. I don't really have I don't have opinions on it. Whatever works for you. A lot of people vouch for it, even not microdosing, macrodosing. But I don't really have an strong opinion either way. There are many things that work different for different people, different approaches, meditations, inquiries, strategies, teachers, traditions. So for me, it's kind of like do what works for you. Um, if you sense that it's having a positive effect on you, more clarity, calming the mind, I'm not against it. But obviously, it's a big topic because there are many different substances, many different types of doses. All that. I was watching Z Dog do Zen rounds, but decided to watch this later or watch that later. I should have invited him. They have a way on YouTube now to do um going live. It's like a corroboration. I don't know what the term is, but going live with somebody else on YouTube, so we can actually go live simultaneously. We'll do that in the near future. It's cool. It's a new thing, brand new. Hasn't happened yet. Okay, it's addictive. Don't do it until you're ready to let it take over your life. I enjoy it. I really do like making content. I like the artistic nature of it. Putting in all these groovy backgrounds, making the music. There's mixed opinions on all of it, but it's what you get when you do art. But to me, it's an art form, and I love it. So yeah, it's fun. Let me know if you have questions at any point. I'm not an expert, but I've learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. Dzogchen tradition, very little. I don't know much about it. I know a lot of people who are practitioners of Dzogchen. I know a good number of people who know a lot about Dzogchen. There's a guy named Akira Malcolm. Malcolm. I want to say it's Malcolm Smith. I might be wrong. I've seen some stuff he writes. He's really, really, really clear. Um, Whatever an Akira is, it's a honorable thing. It's like a Roshi or something. So that's something. If you're interested, check him out. I think you can find him on Facebook. But he's very, very, very clear. Kate, how's it going, Kate? Good to see you, or to see your name. Oh, next time I think we'll do a Zoom. I kind of forgot actually that we were going to do a Zoom instead of this. We'll do that as well. Hi, Angelo. Good to see you again. This is Tomorrow Never Knows. Can you talk about body scans, specifically how to do them without imagining body parts as you go from point to point? Okay, we can talk about body scanning. That will be my first topic. We'll get going on that in a few minutes here. But for now, I'm just going to say hi to a few people and we'll do body scanning. I'm not an expert at body scanning, by the way, but maybe I am. I don't know. Gene, nice to see you. Hey, Val. Thanks for coming. Aaron, what's up? Hey, Bob. Guten Tag. Hola. What's your native language? Mauricio. Mauricio. I love that name. It's Italian, I think. Mauricio, probably. Maybe. Susan. Hello, Susan. From Ireland. Oh, I love Ireland. I probably said this last time. It's one of my favorite. It's probably maybe the favorite place I've ever been outside of the States. As far as traveling, I just loved it there. I went to the west side, near the Cliffs of Moher. Went to the Burns. Beautiful, beautiful, very nice people. Just loved it. Weather's gorgeous. It's a beautiful place. I recommend anyone go to Ireland. It's easier to travel to from the States than many places in Europe. Actually, it's a shorter trip, shorter flight. Hmm. Hmm. What else we got here? Jill Taylor's Stroke of Insight. I've not read the book. I've heard people tell me it's profound. I've seen her. Probably everyone here's seen it, but if they haven't, check it out. It's a short TED talk she has called A Stroke of Insight. It's very good, beautiful. But I haven't read her book. I should interview her. That would be a good interview. Costa Rica. Okay. Costa Riqueño. Very nice. I'm sure it's gorgeous. I've never been there. Been to the Caribbean, but never been down to. Question about working on beliefs. Okay. and we'll talk about beliefs. Someone else is seconding beliefs. We'll do beliefs. How to work through a recurring belief. Yep, we can do that. Fernando Cortez from Brazil. Happy to be here. Happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. Awesome. Okay. Got some peeps. Peeps in the house. Okay. So we'll get to you, Kate, in a moment with the question about beliefs. I'm going to talk about body scanning. Body scanning. So body scanning is something that, happy Sunday, Amanda. Nice to see you. Jill Taylor. I would if she will respond. She probably will. The more famous people are, the less likely they are to actually get an email from me when I send it. I love interviewing people, but I'll put her on my list. Aphrodite, nice to see you. Hey, Frank, from Lisbon, Portugal. My sister just traveled to Portugal. Gosh, it's in Portugal, right? If I got that wrong, I'd feel really stupid. I went to an American high school, American public high school, so we didn't learn a lot about geography. My sister just went to Portugal, and she absolutely loved it. Loved it. Hey, Robert. You are from Maine. Oh, cool. I love Maine too. Traveled there one time. Got a lobster roll immediately when I got there. Angela, welcome. I'm happy you're here. Naran. Sorry if I said your name wrong. People loved our interview. Our talk was great. Patrick, hey, Switzerland, cool. Very cool. Tacoma, Washington, I've been there too. Hey, Will. Bara Jag. Sorry. You probably told me your real name at some point too. Hey, Rowena. From Belgium. Sweet. We have a lot of European folks. I love it. Connecticut. My father was born in Connecticut, Torrington. Patrick, that's Chris. Hey, Chris. Patrick from Ottawa. Welcome. Hey, Jack. Cool. Lots of peeps up in here. If I missed anybody, sorry. So we're going to talk about body scanning. And I will give you a brief overview based on what I know, which is not a lot, about the term body scanning, where it came from. So the Goenka, I don't even know how to pronounce it, retreats, the Vipassana retreats, structured 10-day retreat, very much based on body scanning. I've never done one. I've known many people who have done them. The body scanning, the idea is generally moving your attention through various aspects of your body again and again. That's the simple, for anyone who doesn't know what it is or doesn't understand the term or haven't heard the term. Just came back from one. Cool. Yeah, it can be intense, especially for people who have never done a retreat. That's a lot. 10 days is a long time. So yeah, body scanning, moving your attention through the body. The question above about body scanning was this: how do you do body scanning, or how do you body scan without imagining the parts of the body, without overlaying the mental image of the body as you do it? Okay, so first, number one, the fact that you notice that is great. When I was younger, much younger, before awakening, before anything, I remember trying to meditate. I think I don't know if it was like in a martial arts class or something. And it was like, focus on your breath, move your attention to your breath or something. I could not do it. I didn't understand. My mind would just go, what are they talking about? I don't understand. I'm breathing. I'm always breathing. Why would I don't get it. Like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And probably 0% of that time, I was actually putting my attention on the breathing sensation. Now, had they actually said, feel the sensation and put your attention there, I might have understood it a little better. But for me, breathing practices and stuff, I didn't get it at all. Probably I was so in my head, and also probably the teaching wasn't great at the time. So that was my experience. And so I understand this, I'm trying to body scan. I'm putting my attention in my head, my neck, my chest, whatever. But my mind is co-opting it. I'm getting in my head about it, right? I totally get that. So here's what I would suggest. first of all, when you start doing this, first just make sure you're relaxed, generally relaxed but alert. So some people can meditate laying down, but for the most part, sitting up is generally best, or otherwise you tend to fall asleep. And then just start. Just do it for a few minutes. Just scan the body and just see what happens, like an empirical approach. What happens when you do it? Where's your attention going? Are you actually feeling? Are you feeling the sensations? Are you completely in your head about it? Like, I don't know what to do. I don't get this. I'm not doing it right. Or is there a combination? Like, I can feel the sensations, but I'm also imagining. You can see the dogs back behind me playing. I think you can. I can. So yeah, you maybe have a combination of like actually feeling the sensations and the mind imagining the body part, right? Oh, I'm feeling the sensations in my neck, but I'm also imagining a neck in my mind, right? Um, if you've gotten that far, that's actually pretty good. That means that you have some presence of mind. You're aware of where your attention is. You're aware that it is two things to have attention in a sensation and have attention in the mind about the sensation. But those are actually two different phenomena. So it's good, right? Hey, Rob. So yeah, it's a good thing that you actually have that presence of mind. So what I would suggest is a couple of things. If you can't even get your attention to the raw sensation, or you're not sure if you're doing it, start with something very simple, like put your hand on your leg, right? Put your hand on your leg and just feel it. Like right now, you're doing that, right? Lift your hand up off your leg. Put your hand back on your leg. Feel the sensation. If even that's not clear, which some people I really are so up in their head about it, about sensation, and they have some like repression, emotional repression, and they're sort of disidentified from the body. Sometimes I'll tell them, like, pinch yourself, like cause like a slight amount of pain. So it's like, oh, okay, that's unmistakable. That's a sensation, right? Everything else that happens after it is not like, oh, I'm pinching myself. Oh, that hurt or whatever, right? But the actual sensation, that's a sensation. That's what we're talking about. Then it's just touch, like just touch your leg, feel the actual sensation. Now you might need to describe it for a moment, or it may make sense to feel it and say, okay, it's warm, it's pressure, like label to tune your attention. But at some point, it's just like, oh, I don't need the labels. It's just that. It's just that, just the sensation, right? As if you were standing there and someone walked up behind you, you didn't know they were there, and they just touched your back. You would notice it immediately, right? Of course. So it's that kind of a thing. So sometimes just the touching the surface of your own skin, or feeling where your feet touch the floor, or your bottom touches the chair, or your back touches the chair, feeling a contact point helps dial you in a little bit. And then you can start to move your attention inward to like more visceral sensations. They're a little bit more nebulous. They're a little more um, non-localized, perhaps, like the internal sensation of the chest, the belly, the head, the neck. Yeah. Um, so moving from that sort of somatic, easily identifiable as far as location sensation, into the internal sensations can be helpful. Once you've dialed into that, and you know, okay, this is definitely the sensation inside my chest, right? The sensation inside my belly. That's good. That's You've made progress, right? Um, Once your attention's in there, gently moving it, like say up and down, like maybe from the belly to the chest, from the chest to the belly, from the chest into the neck, like just gently moving your attention and staying right with that raw sensation is valuable. It might be better to start that way, or it may just work for you to start that way instead of going head to toe and trying to be really regimented about it, but rather dial into the pure sensation first, wherever it is, and then see if you can just move your attention like a little bit up and down, maybe down into the pelvis, into the thighs, into the knees, into the feet, right? That kind of thing. Um, and so that's just to primarily make sure you're actually feeling that the sensation is primary, and that you are, I guess, confident, you know, that that's what you're experiencing, right? Hopefully you're doing this along with me. Then I would say, if while you're doing that, so again, maybe let's you say you start in your core, and you're kind of coming up into the chest, down into the belly, down into the pelvis, back up into the chest, like a little more slowly than that, up into the head, even into the face. Feel the teeth, feel your tongue, feel your throat, feel your ears, feel your scalp, the back of your head, right? These are all, you can feel all of these places. We just totally overlook them most of the time. So once you're kind of, you feel comfortable just moving your attention in a pretty organic way, then you might want to try and see if you can move it in a little bit more of a regimented way. But I would start organically. I would start more out of curiosity than this is the way you do it. You go head, neck, face, chest, whatever, right? Because if you impose a very rigid regiment onto your experience that you don't usually engage, just the rigidity of it itself can put you in your head. So I might start that way, and then once you feel comfortable doing this, then you should be hopefully approaching it from a place of spontaneity and gentleness instead of a rigid application. If you're doing that, then it's usually pretty easy to sense when attention moves into the mind and is picturing your chest, picturing it as a mental image, or your pelvis or your feet. And when you're actually sensing the actual sensation. If it's not clear or obvious, then purposely move your attention, like from the sensation of the feet to the imagination of the feet. Try to imagine your feet as clear without looking at them. Try to imagine them as crispy feet, crispily, as clearly as you can, your feet, picturing them. Just don't try to feel them, just picture them in vivid technicolor, unless you have aphantasia, in which case you can't. So picture them, and then move your attention to just the sensations without the picture. And then move your attention back to the picture, right? Slowly. Now, doing this, what happens is your nervous system gets used to delineating where attention is. So those are the strategies I would take. Let me know how it goes. Okay, I'm gonna scroll back up and look for Kate was asking about beliefs. 10-day Vipassana retreats are intense. Yes, they are. Yeah. Good day, everyone. Rob, Lava Light. Lava Light is here. Hello, Lava Light. Thanks for your referral. I'll have to set up a time to talk to your friend. Hey, Amber. Okay. Oh, here we go. Question. Can you tell us what happened when you woke up? How it came about, so to speak? Not as a map, but as a story. I have many interviews where I tell this story. Lisa Carnes interviewed me not too long ago. That's a good one. I may postpone answering this question right now just because I have many interviews where I told it. And I've told it different ways, but I might come back to this. You can't find it? Okay, look up Lisa Carnes. She interviewed me like 2 weeks ago. Look up my interview on Bat Gap, Buddha at the gas pump. I definitely talked about it there. You can just look up Angelo Di Lulo interviews. You'll find a bunch of them. Okay, hey Frank. Why be aware of the sensation at all? As a practice. It's just a practice. If you're not doing that practice, then don't worry about it. Crispy. Yeah, that's right. Crispy toes. I've seen crispy toes, by the way. It's called dry gangrene. If you get frostbite like on one or two toes, it'll just turn black. It'll be like a piece of, it's almost like charcoal, and it's not infected or anything. And people can walk around like that. They can actually fall off, but usually we'll surgically remove them. Without the overlay of the body thought, isn't there the sensations in my body feel like they are bigger or kind of change location? Yeah, exactly. Since my hands feel like it fills up the whole world. Yes, Kathy, that's right. That's exactly what happens. And at some point, you'll just die into that. Poof. Like a cup of water thrown into the ocean, and it won't come back. Believe it or not, it does happen. Jason B. I've had 2 experiences falling asleep in the past 6 months that, oh my goodness. Hold on, I got to move my comments. There we go. Gosh, I lost you. Where are you at? So my comments got, oh, there we go. Jason B says he's had 2 experiences when falling asleep in the past 6 months that felt like being pulled or dissolved into eternity. Yes, this is common. Feeling of energy in my body also changed. Is this normal? Well, nothing about this stuff's normal, but it's common when we're engaging the awakening process. It's very common, pretty common. Um, it's probably a good sign. It's probably like a pre-taste of awakening. Tends to come in dreams and when you're close to deep sleep. But in and of itself, it's nothing to try to reproduce, grab onto, um, use as a badge of honor, which I don't think you're doing. But yeah, you just generally kind of forget it. It's not a big deal, but it's a good sign. Means that you're engaging a process that is starting to um, transform your identity. It's finding the holes in your identity. You're welcome, Frank. I hope that's helpful. Trying to send my question. Okay, we're waiting for Kate's question on beliefs. Amaragita, I'm curious about you talk about restlessness getting Velcro to desire. Okay, yes, desire and aversion, which you could call the fourth and fifth fetters, which you could also call reactivity, um, which you could also call. I think reactivity is the best word. 'Cause that's kind of what it is. Feels like. Um, Once we have an awakening, we actually usually notice our own. First of all, we notice the emotions much stronger, more directly because they're not so repressed. We're not so lost in our minds, and we notice reactivity as such. It's just obvious. Hopefully, if it's not obvious to you after awakening, then I sometimes have concerns. Um, because you could be overlooking it or purposely not looking at it or bypassing it. But generally speaking, you just pull the curtain back on what makes you feel like a you, and what you see that makes you feel like a you is a lot of reactivity. I could call it struggle. I could call it suffering, pushing and pulling, but it's this massive like reactive energy. And it's bound into thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. What underlies that is something that's very hard to get to directly, but the more you start to dissolve the reactivity body, the more obvious it gets. And that is this thing called energetic restlessness. You're not going to pull identity completely away from that until the subtle self sense completely just drops out, which is sort of late. Well, it's not sort of, it is late stage realization. It's reasonably uncommon still from what I've seen, but I know many people now. I don't know about many. I know a good number of people who have realized that. Once you realize that, you're in direct contact with that energetic restlessness. The energetic restlessness, I'm going to just give it a different term. I'm going to call it the will to be, the animating force of life. It's what's underlying the fight and flight response, fight, flight, and freeze. It's what's underlying self defense mechanisms at the most fundamental level in all life forms. That's energetic restlessness. So you don't really have direct contact to it until later on. But especially once you've calmed and maybe even broken the spell of reactivity, it becomes much, much more obvious. And it comes and goes. It's not always there. Well, it's probably always there to some degree, but sometimes it's based on conditions that's much more prominent in your life. And that would look like if there's an ego intact, if there's mind identification fully functioning, what that would look like is turmoil in your life, big disruptions in your life, like whatever, call it like addictions and major problems with relationships and all this. That's the story's version of this. Okay. That's restlessness. My question is too long to enter all at once. So we'll just do it in chunks. We'll get little bite-sized pieces of your question and we'll digest them as a group. All right. Mauricio, I'm afraid that if I go too deep, I will not be able to function properly. Okay. Maybe in my work. So this belief holds me back. Is very common. It's a very common belief that holds people back in before awakening, especially. I appreciate the suggestions. Sorry if my English is not good. Your English is just fine, actually. I completely understand. So this concern that I will not be able to function, and often if you have kids, you're married, things like that, often it comes into term it comes in the form of, I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of my family. Okay. For moms, it tends to come in this form. I'm afraid I'm not going to take care of my kids. Like I'll lose the love for my kids or interest or something. Both of these concerns, number one, they just show that you're a compassionate person and they demonstrate that you actually care deeply about probably mostly your family, depending on what's the source of this, but that you care to be a productive citizen in society. So it's good. I think that's really good that you have that concern, first of all. Second of all, it's just a sign that the ego hits you where it hurts. The ego is the ultimate opportunist and it knows you well. In fact, it knows you better than you know yourself because it's older than you. It's older than me. This ego structure, pain body. Let's use Eckhart Tolle's term pain body. It's ancient. It's been around a long, long time. And it knows how to make us cringe, knows how to cause fear. Now, I'm embodying it a little more than is necessary. I'm making it sound like an entity. Um, Another way of saying it, a more psychology based way of saying it would be that the mind, I'll say it this way: the nervous system um, is wired such that when it gets a response, it'll repeat the stimulus. So if you have a fear response to a certain thought, that thought will come back again, right? What you resist persists, and that kind of thing. So, so that's the deal. What I will tell you on a personal level is it's very unlikely that that will happen, just based on my experience. When I see people wake up, I don't see them abandoning their children. I don't see them generally. I don't see them like quitting their jobs and taking on a new vocation. I also don't see people going completely dysfunctional. I haven't seen that with an initial awakening. Now, there's a caveat to this, and it's an interesting one, and that is I've heard of and met people who've had some dysfunction after with awakening, but I only met them later. And without exception that I can think of now, every one of them had awakening happen with no preparation, no context, and no understanding of what was happening to them. And it's not that they couldn't function, more that they either completely dissociated out of fear. Um, they tried to talk about it to a lot of people and ended up like in a emergency department or even a psychiatric ward for a short period of time. That's happened. And this is usually deep awakenings in people who did not know what was happening. So there's somewhat of a protective mechanism, I think, actually. Well, I don't think, I'm pretty sure of it. I'm quite sure of it. There's not only a protective mechanism, but a very important aspect to this. When you have buy-in, you're endorsing the process yourself. You're actually engaging it yourself. So these concerns are well placed. They show that you care about your life and how you affect people. But in practical terms, with initial awakenings, I've seen people go through them who are doing competitive athletics at a national level, going through graduate school, working physicians, mothers, fathers, busy people, people who are not so busy. They all have done pretty darn well, actually. So that's the best answer I got in the moment for you. Hey, Bob, take a belief like I am scared or something is missing in me, how to deal with it. Well, really, rather than tell you how to deal with it, I'm more inclined to say investigate what a belief actually is. So just put your attention in your thoughts and just watch them come and go. Watch your thoughts roll up on you. And then ask yourself, which of these do I believe and why? And if you catch yourself believing a thought, if you notice, oh my God, this thought that says I'm bored, that's per a recent interview, or this thought that says, I always get this far when I'm meditating and then this happens. The thought that you feel like is true, that's a belief, right? Because it seems like that's something objectively true about the world. So we can disidentify from many thoughts, but still not even notice other thoughts they're just simply beliefs. So I would have you, without just taking my word for what I just said, but like investigate yourself and just get a really good handle on, or maybe not a handle on, but a sense of what differentiates a thought from a belief and what you feel like when you believe it and why. And what are the conditions when a thought becomes a belief versus when it doesn't? Is it when you're stressed? Is it when you feel threatened? Like not physically, but threatened by some situation, when you feel unsafe, insecure, all those things. That's where the money really is with beliefs, is making a study of how you interact with thoughts, how you interact with beliefs, and how that relationship affects your tendency to buy into them at sometimes, and other times not at all. Okay, cool. Great question. Here we go, Kate. This is the appetizer, morsel number one. When working with beliefs, how much needs to be done beyond recognizing the belief? Not a lot, as I was describing just a moment ago. If you actually see a thought as a belief, that thought is you're disentangled from it. Does that make sense? Now, what often happens is there are associated beliefs or associated thoughts that we don't see, like a little different form of that same thought or belief. Yeah. And that bears some continued work and willingness to inquire. Whatever worked for you to see this belief as a thought, essentially, use that same strategy to dig in and find associated beliefs. Sometimes someone will say something like, I'm thinking of an example, like just a Facebook comment or a YouTube comment. It will be something like, I'll think of a recent one I heard was, or I read was like, I have a weakness for my children. Whenever something I can't, um, I can't let go when it comes to my children or something like this. The person who said it's actually in here. Um, I'm misparaphrasing what they said, but my point is this: sometimes certain statements are just like loaded with assumptions. Actually, many things we say are loaded with assumptions. So when I see something like that, sometimes I'll be like, "Oh man, let's unpack this. Let's just play the game called brainstorm. What is this sentence assuming?" Right? And it can be assuming all kinds of things. Like, I'll use a different example that's more simple. Like, so for instance, you could tell somebody, um, "Yeah, I know when my partner finds out about this, they're going to be upset." I'm just making something up. What are the assumptions built into that? Well, one assumption is you know what your partner's going to do. You can predict the future. Another assumption is whatever maybe your partner did in the past, you're making the assumption they'll always do that in the future. It's another assumption, right? Um, Another assumption is, um, my partner is separate from me. Like these are far more fundamental assumptions. Another assumption is I have to think about this right now. Why is this getting my attention in my mind? Right. Another assumption is if I can get the person I'm talking to endorse what I'm saying, it makes it more true. Right. Like an assumption is the story I'm telling myself is true. Another assumption is that the story has any life outside of this one thought right now that just arose in my mind. Right. So I'm just using that as an example, but many statements we have, if we just listen to what we say to people or even our self-talk, we can unpack them into like many beliefs. So there are often associated beliefs that are still sticky even when we see through one belief. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Is the practice of body scan enough for the first shift? I don't know the answer to that. I think anything is possible. I wouldn't exclude the possibility. I can't do that. I can't exclude the possibility. I'm sure it's happened. From what I've seen, the thing that really works, the things that work the best are the things that I emphasize. Um, really having a heart level commitment, being willing to let go, being willing to go beyond thought and feel the discomfort of going beyond thought and staying there. Self inquiry, if it works for you, it feels like you have true curiosity about it and you continue to dig in and go beyond thought. What is moo? To merge with something, a one pointed experience to where you just don't let thought sneak in anymore and it becomes like almost like an obsession. Those work. I know because I've seen them all work many times and they're all different forms of the same thing. So, what really makes people wake up, they just get so tired of doing anything else. They're tired of suffering. They're tired of messing around with spirituality. They're tired of using a technique but holding back just enough so that I can watch what's happening all the time and try to force it to happen the way I think it's going to happen. Getting tired of that. That's what makes people wake up. It helps people wake up. Um, so keep at it. Keep plugging away. If something's working for you, great. If it feels like you're digging deeper, 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 great. If it doesn't, if it feels stagnant or it just doesn't feel like it works for you, try something else. That's what I would say. Okay. Kate, here we go. Number 2. We've had the appetizer. This is the salad portion. Okay. If I were to Byron Katie each one, Byron Katie's a verb now. I'll barricade the shit out of that belief. It would take me all day. What's the best approach here? Find the stickiest belief, the most root belief. It depends where you're at, but I know where you're at because I talked to you. When you're working through reactivity, get as close to the root as you can. Find what it is that just makes you feel like I cannot be okay with this right now. Whatever it is. It could be a political thing. It could be the way this person talks to me. It could be so many things. But you want to get to the root, to something where making a simple statement about what's actually happening and what you think should be happening instead, and that there's the gap that's completely irreconcilable. I think that was it's either 6 or 7 syllables in that word. You get yourself to this place where you know that gap is irreconcilable, and it doesn't, but still something in you is like, no, I want it that way. That's where the magic is when it comes to reactivity. If you get to the root, then you don't have to worry about all these other beliefs and stuff. At some point, they'll just stop. Okay. That was part 2. So now we have Amber. I love when you said to Lisa, when you started to see non-duality, that, oh, no one is going to want this. It wasn't non-duality, to be very precise. Really clear formless non-duality is kind of like that because people feel like I'm just dying into it. I'm completely dying into it. It's like, whoa. It goes from like, holy crap, this is so cool, this immersion. I'm over there, I'm over here, I'm the tree, I'm me, whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like something goes, whoa. Where am I going to go? So that's a precursor to what we're talking about. But when the self structure completely just stops functioning, that's what I meant was not wantable. And it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just that the whole mechanism and apparatus of the human body mind and all of its delusion about what it thinks it needs, who it thinks it is, why it's afraid of what it's afraid of, all of it, like literally all of it, why it does spirituality, it's all based on this assumption. It's all based on an assumption. And that is somehow you can get what you want. This is like the 10th fetter of Buddhism, essentially, ignorance, right? I can somehow get what I want, which really boils down in a very simple way, though understanding this does you no good. You have to go through the process. It boils down to essentially, I have any possibility of making a situation less painful than it is. It's just as simple and dumb as it is. That comes down to this whole thing comes down to that. But when that flips, it's the difference between heaven and hell. It's everything. It's so simple. So that's the part that's like, it's not wantable because the whole wanting apparatus is an error. That's what's been causing the suffering the whole time. So you can't want this, but doesn't mean it's bad. It's not bad or good. It's not here or there. It's completely and absolutely ineffable in every way. So for some people, it's really like a huge disappointment for a short time. So it's hard to explain all this, but it is. It can be. And then like on the other side of it, though, when you see nothing ever needed a self, the dog doesn't need a self. The sun doesn't need a self. The entire galaxy spinning doesn't need a self. A flower doesn't need a self. It's just not, it doesn't matter, right? So you with non-dual radiance, it's just radiantly shining from everything as everything. Why? There's no need for a self there. There's no room for a self either. So that's part of it. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Tomorrow never knows. Thank you so much. Makes sense what you said about having it come spontaneously. Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. Don't practice things rigidly. This is a challenge I see with a lot of people. Practicing things too rigidly. Too much tension and force on the practice. You're trying to force a practice to do something. Don't. When it comes to this, don't do it. When it comes to you're trying to wake up or you're trying to not be asleep anymore, whatever. Don't apply anything too rigidly because it's not about control. It's the opposite. Kate, number 3. We've had the salad. Hopefully we didn't eat too many breadsticks. We had our appetizer. Now it's time for the entree. Okay. Number 3. Also, I find that when doing work with beliefs, I have a very short attention span. Yeah, that's okay. It happens. It's like my system doesn't want to do more than a few minutes. Okay, that's fine. If your system can do it for 3 minutes, fine. If it can do it for 10 minutes, fine. You do a lot of work. Like again, I if anyone's listening, I know Kate. So you do a lot of work and you do good work. So it's fine. We're not machines. We're organic. But I will tell you, when it comes to reactivity work, when it comes to equanimity work, what you're describing is very common, and it will go on for a little while. It's just it's the restlessness. It's the what I said. Like when you realize underneath that superficial identity layer that gets scraped away with identity, essentially, when you realize that underneath is just a ton of reactivity, what that reactivity is based on is this assumption. Well, it's based on a couple of things, let's say, but part of it is it doesn't want to see what's causing the reactivity. Because if it sees what's causing the reactivity, again, here's a paradox. It will be clear that there's nothing causing the reactivity. There's no root of it, and it will stop. So there's something that doesn't want to see this. So if I could describe the flavor or tone of equanimity work, it's something like this: looking in the last place you want to look, and not really because it's like horrific or terrifying or anything like that. It's just it's a habit pattern. It's what the self structure is built on top of largely. So there's something slippery about it. It's slippery and it can hide. It's also why it's very convenient and easy for some people to go, well, there's no self, there's no one, there's nothing to do. Like, why would I do anything? I can't do anything, There's no, right? Not with this stuff. You don't track it down, it will be there the rest of your life, probably. Might not be, but it doesn't take superhuman capabilities, but it takes a bit of determination and a willingness to keep digging in, to keep looking, and it does pay off. It's well worth it. So you're doing fine, but there's something that doesn't want to see it in us, and that is reactivity, right? Good, great questions. Number 4. Now we're getting to dessert. Number 4 is sometimes I'll be on a roll and dig in several levels. Good, half an hour. Yep, I've seen you do it. As if my system had enough for a few weeks. It's fine. This is very nonlinear, especially when we're talking about reactivity. So good. Okay, Ashley. I've seen those photos as we have to talk about frostbite in Saskatchewan. Yeah. Basic first aid training there. Yep. It can happen. It's better than getting it infected, but it's still pretty funky looking. Robert, we got Grover here. I love it. Okay. When is book 2, and how much shadow work practice and techniques will be there? Most of the shadow work practice and techniques are in book 1, to be honest. They really are. 97% of what I talk about with people, even who are working in deeper stages, is in the first book. It genuinely is. But the second book will have some more about shadow work, some more nuanced stuff, especially about reactivity that we're talking about. And it will be a while. My life is not on any kind of recognizable timeline. I would guess it's in the next couple of years, though. But I have a lot of material on this stuff for sure. You have everything you need with like the book and what I've put out on videos. But yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, I need to finish the audiobook, which might take a little longer. Once that's done, I can start working on the second book. But it won't take me nearly as long as the first one. Okay, 4 parts of my question because it was so long. I know. Well, I was just having fun with you. Actually, it worked really well in 4 parts for the flow, and I would have been hard to answer a whole paragraph. Identity. Frank asked, could you give your definition of the word identity? What you take yourself to be? That's one definition. That's a pretty good one. The identity structure has levels to it, has layers to it, and it has different components to it. Yeah. Rob, since we're talking about sensation, can one become generally more sensitive to body sensations? Yeah, you do. Not only are you more sensitive, though, you're more attuned to them. And we generally, it waxes and wanes as far as like you'll have a huge drop in, or a layer drop away that was like sort of a barrier, And all of a sudden you'll be in far more contact with the senses, not just the body sense, but sound too, the visual sense, taste, smell. You'll suddenly be more sensitive. And sometimes with that comes another level of repression that we didn't fully see. So it's almost like, oh God, I can't take it. I can't stand it. That sounds driving me crazy, or this or that. And so we come into some reactivity or some annoyance or whatever. And then it tends to, and it calms down again. So it goes in layers where it's like just more contact, more direct, even not contact, where it's just oneness, let's say. And then often some more repressed material will come and we'll work through that. And then it starts to turn from like a sensation mass that felt really uncomfortable to one that's like, this is what I've been looking for. Paradox. Hey, Eric. Are there common meds that can inhibit this process? That's a good question. I know this. When we talk about your true nature or our true nature or the true nature of reality, it is an exceedingly powerful force. Yeah, I've seen it do crazy things, wake people up in all kinds of wild and crazy situations. So there's definitely nothing that will absolutely stop that from happening if it's going to happen. But if you're using a medication or a drug in a way that's just reinforcing or making it much easier for you to avoid your emotions, for instance, that probably can hinder the process somewhat. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. I'm more like, keep waking up. If you have a severe addiction, and I don't think you do at all, but I mean, if somebody has a severe addiction that's causing ongoing damage in your life, you're hurting somebody and you know it, you're destroying your health or your career or whatever, I would say address that first. Probably that's the most important thing. That's what you need. Short of that, addictions, maybe you've had an addiction to a certain medication for years. I'd say just keep waking up. Keep waking up. Sometimes you have to get to very deep levels of realization before addictions fall away. Many prominent teachers in the past and present died with severe addictions, like alcohol, right? Trungpa Rinpoche was one of them. Alan Watts, Mayazumi Roshi, I believe. If I'm falsely accusing anyone, and I don't have a problem with it. And Osho was on benzodiazepines, but they said they were being given to him by a doctor, sort of purposely. Sketchy stuff went on with Osho, with the people around him. But anyway, so there are many prominent people who in the past who have still had addictions. And to me, that's likely. I can never say 100%. That's likely because they didn't fully dissolve reactivity. When you dissolve dissolve desire and ill will, it'd be pretty unlikely you'd actually be addicted to something. But anything's possible, I suppose. Audiobook chapters, you're welcome. Glad you like them. I try to give my patron circle members something extra because I don't have all of the retreats going forward are going to be there for you. And over the next couple of years, there'll be obviously a lot more and more material. But right now I don't have a ton because a lot of it was already uploaded. But I'll put extra stuff on there for y'all. Jonathan, I used to have that experience of being pulled into eternity when I was a child. Yeah, this is a pretty common one. There's another couple people on here I know that also had similar things. When they're falling asleep, can never let go. Yeah, when you're a child, you're trying to form an ego. You're trying to form an identity, and you need to various degrees. So it's confusing, terrifying, potentially, and maybe not advisable necessarily for a child to go off into the la la land, to the void, pulled back to earth again almost as soon as it started. Yeah, that's a reasonably common impetus to get people interested in awakening later in life. Sometimes it can be like borderline traumatic, actually, depending. Danielle, do you have a general meditation time frequency recommendation? I explore the topic often throughout the day, but I've been a little lackadaisical about consistent meditation. Yeah, I mean, I think consistency generally is valuable with meditation, especially at first. It's very hard for me to put hard and fast rules on this, though, because of a few things. One is I think it can mislead people sometimes. Another is because everybody's different. And a third thing is I've seen people wake up who don't meditate, don't like to meditate, and wake up to deep stages of realization. It's not super common, but I've seen it. It's just so different for people. Everyone's so different. I generally do recommend meditation. For you, I mean, I would just say, you know, 30 minutes to an hour a day, depending on how much time you have. But if not, 20 minutes twice a day is reasonable. That's what TM teaches you when you start TM. But if you can do 30 minutes twice a day, like when you get up, just get up a slightly earlier to meditate, and then before bed to meditate, or maybe in the evening sometime. And just do it as a regular practice consistently for several months. That just changes things. It does. It changes your overall feeling, overall mental clarity. I really think it just does. So I would recommend it. But again, some people have trouble with that kind of rigidity. So there's no reason to beat yourself up if that doesn't work that way for you. Yeah. Message retracted. Okay. Mauricio, thanks for your answer. You're welcome. Okay. Bob. Oh my gosh, I lost my comments again. There we go. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I know about apologizing for your English skills. I would do the same thing trying to speak any language because I'm, but yeah, your English is great, and most European people have pretty good English as well. Um, Rob, I recently recognized that my desire to awaken is at least partially motivated by my fear of death. Yes, it's good to see all these different motivations floating around in the fish tank. Like if I just see what I really am, I won't fear death. Do I just sit with this, or is it recognized enough? I think it's a good motivation to solve the problem of birth and death. Don't change it. Keep it. It's fuel for the fire. Don't think about it. You don't need to think about or analyze it, though, right? It's fine that it's there. I wouldn't try to dissolve it outright at the moment, unless it's really distracting. Then maybe just go right through it, like Ramana Maharishi did. Will, anything in particular you found helpful for working with sticky shame and guilt? Yeah. First of all, be gentle with yourself. Just be kind to yourself. Second of all, know that they're going to come. You're going to feel them. Third, if you feel them and recognize them, as I kind of said earlier about a different topic, that's good. Not knowing that they're operating is when we go unconscious and do sometimes harmful things to ourselves and others. So it's great that you see and feel and recognize. Yeah. And then ultimately it's really see them as a narrative, that they're thoughts, right? Sit if you feel, oh man, I feel shame, guilt around a certain thing. I did this to that person and I can't take it back. It's impossible. I don't even know where they are. I can't apologize. I just feel guilty. Sit with it. Just let yourself feel guilty fully. What does it feel like to just feel guilty? And there's also an aspect with guilt where you're reminded that you don't have control. I can't control the fact that I did that. I can't control the fact that I feel guilty about it. So be it. We're not perfect beings, but it makes me feel out of control. So what does it feel like to feel out of control? What does it feel like to feel like I can't do anything about this? Helplessness. That's often at the root of a lot of other emotional fixations, vasanas. There's an associated sense of a fear of not having control, a fear of helplessness. So explore all those directly. And when you're experiencing an emotion, you can always try to see the world through its eyes. See what's its experience? What would it say if it could talk? Okay. I don't think I gave a referral. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were someone else. Sorry. By locating, again. Just kidding. Max, welcome. Didn't see you before. Max Holman. When looking for thoughts, I'm often not sure where thought begins. Do you need to know where it begins? As it seems to be continuous between actual words and subtle energy fluctuations. eye movements, something like that. Can you just look into the space where a thought could arise right now? For instance, look at the wall in front of you. Do you think a thought's going to arise out of that wall? Probably not, right? Feel the sensation in your hands. Do you think a thought's going to emanate from that sensation? Such that you would know, oh, that's a thought down there instead of my fingers or the sensation. Probably not, right? So then become curious. Well, where the heck does a thought arise? Where? Look for it directly. That's it. Don't overanalyze it. With the thing about thoughts is very simple. Okay, the thing about consciousness, thoughts, and first awakening is very simple practices are the best. Why? Because thoughts are so tricky, right? They're so sneaky and tricky. So just become interested in thought substance. What is it? Where is it? And just move your attention in. Not when I say what is it, where is it, I don't mean like so you can come back and tell me. I don't want words about it. And I don't want you to think about it in words. I want you to go there. Just like the ocean. If we're standing next to the ocean, I'd say get in the ocean. I wouldn't want you to go touch your toe in and go, oh, okay, it was cold. It was wet. I tasted it was a little salty. I'm like, no, get in the ocean. Okay, put your whole foot in. Oh, okay, it was cold. A little something brushed up against my foot, right? That's what people tend to do with thoughts a lot. I'm like, no. I don't need you to describe thoughts to me. I don't care about that, right? I want you to go into the thought space. And if you're asking how, that's a thought. So move your attention right to the middle of that thought that says how. How could I ... Right? It's somewhere. How do you know that thought's there if it's not, right? If it's not somewhere, go to that thought space, be in that thought space. And when the mind calms down, just don't move. That's the key. Simple. Meaning keep it simple. Okay. Making it more graspable. See, that's the thing about this is like, especially the first movement. I don't want to make it graspable because what you're probably asking is, how can I get my mind around it? How can I understand it? But I don't want you to understand it because that's having a relationship with thought. I want you to merge with thought. Okay. Pronunciation of Saskatchewan. Oh, cool. I feel very bad time I put where I'm in. So Ashley, I feel bad every time where I am from in a comment. Canada is just too general, though, especially when talking climate. I love Canada. It's a beautiful place. Beautiful place. Matthew. Could you end this session with a brief guided pointing? Well, maybe, but my whole thing is pointing here, hopefully. But maybe, I will keep that in mind. Okay, Amber. Thank you, Angelo. Yep, control is one of my main challenges. Everyone's. Adyashanti has a thing I've heard him say. He says, a lot of traditions say that underneath everything, it's a fear of death. And he says, I don't find that. I find it's actually a fear of loss of control. I think that's pretty accurate. But true death, the big death is the same as seeing that you don't have control. I need an excuse. Will. When you've seen people wake up without meditation, are there common themes? Inquiry. There's 3 things to remember about that. Inquiry. How did the fingers go? 2, then 1, then 3. Inquiry. True inquiry, meaning you really are curious. You have to be curious about something about you, something about you or about suffering or about mind or about, but it's got to be in the immediate. It's not like, oh, I'm curious about Buddhism. Does Dzogchen, is it more people get enlightened through Dzogchen or Zen, or does Dzogchen this term mean that term in Zen? And that's a different kind of interest, right? It's an intellectual interest, which is fine. This is an interest in your true nature. What the hell is going on right now? That's the key. True interest, and then inquiry, and a willingness to. That's really the formula, and a willingness to feel uncomfortable, which usually is equivalent to just seeing that you've always been uncomfortable. Acknowledging your own suffering that's why it's so important with this. If you can't acknowledge your own suffering, I don't know how you do this intentionally. It's a fish swimming up a waterfall in Zen. Okay. Jan. Hi, Jan. Exquisitely sensitive. You are exquisitely sensitive. First of all, first of all, there's a lot. It's a common thing now to say, I'm very sensitive and I'm an empath. It's a thing. Like everyone likes to say that now. It's fine. But first of all, every human being is sensitive. We are exquisitely sensitive. However, the spell of mind identification and our conditioning can make it not obvious at all. With that said, some people are definitely more energetically sensitive. They just are. That's good in some ways, and it has a lot of pitfalls. Dissociation is probably one of the biggest ones. So I believe you, Jan, that you are. I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying I always want to point that out, that like there's not special people out there called empaths or something. Like we all have empathic mirroring, and we all got empathic impressioning as children and so forth. But we can get impressioning, emotional impressioning upon us that teaches us to ignore our empathic nature, emotional repression. And that is unfortunate when that happens to a child. It's really sad, but that's the family model that they grew up in. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll look at your question here. Not reactive. I like that. As long as you're not latently as long as you're not avoidant. You can be avoidant and not reactive. Reactivity, the difference between curing the tendency of reactivity and realizing equanimity and living in I have no idea if this is you at all. I'm just pointing this out for anyone listening. Living in a place where you're numb, where you're living in a state of constant hesitancy, avoidance, and or disassociation is not the same thing as equanimity. Equanimity, you're quite engaged. You become very engaged in life because there's nothing to risk. There's no fear of life anymore, for the most part. Okay. You feel others' energy, I'm sure. So there's I did a quick video this morning. I addressed this a little bit. Senior seeker here, I think he said. Meditation for years, that's great. Metaphysical stuff happens. Okay, good. So we go through these levels of how we regard others as we wake up. So with an initial awakening, often we run around and we're probably transmitting because it's just so fresh and so simple and innocent, and it does transmit right away. So we go around and talk to people, and some people are like, whoa, that's crazy that happened to you. And then they start feeling it. And other people at some point will be like telling you to F off, right? That's because you don't have discernment yet. Often I didn't. And for most people, it's like you just learn not to talk about it. So that first form of Zen stink is like before awakening, you learn about spirituality and you think you're super smart and you run around in really arrogant and critical ways, telling other people they're not spiritual, but they need to be. And you've figured out what their problem is and you're going to help them with it. Right. That's like full on Zen stink. After awakening is a different form where you just kind of transmit it and it's not hard to do. And you can even talk about insight to some degree, to various degrees, but you just sense it's like, it's not really time yet. Right. That's not really Zen stink. That's just what happens. Then there's this other form of Zen stink that can come. It's more subtle, where you actually know to some degree that you can influence other people's energetically. Hopefully you're not doing it in an overt controlling way, but you just do a little bit. And when you're around people, you become more and more sensitive. Your natural exquisite sensitivity is just completely uncovered, and you can't not feel what they feel at all anymore. This can be really surprising to people who had a mind identified version of themselves that was like confident, maybe not detached, but not moved by other people around them. And they're like maybe very leadership oriented. It can be very surprising to them when all of a sudden they can't not feel things anymore. You can't not feel other people's sadness. You can't not feel other people's grief, right? Can't not feel other people's anger. And like, you're like, shit, my body's reacting to that. And that can bring on another type of this like Zen stink, which is a little more subtle, where you secretly really want them to wake up, but for yourself, partially because it would make you feel better. When we go through this, we can end up a little bit more reclusive, judgmental, maybe a little passive aggressive, like different things can come into play. And it's also natural. Like it's going to happen to everyone to some degree. When with equanimity specifically, that goes away. You don't, you're okay with it. Like, you're okay whether someone in front of you is, no matter what they're feeling, you're okay with it because you're okay with everything you're feeling. That's the key. When you're completely okay with what you feel, whether it comes from that person who's got a massive amount of emotional repression and you can feel it the second you walk into the room with them, or someone who's super clear, or you're by yourself, it doesn't actually matter because you're not afraid of anything that happens inside of you anymore emotionally. It's okay. It's all okay. That's a really nice place to be. And from there, then quote unquote other people, and they stop being a problem for the most part. Now you still might, and you probably will be a little more on the reclusive side than the average person because most of us are. Like, you don't purposely engage in extremely intense debates and conversations and crowded places and places where people are partying. You tend to be less interested in that kind of thing for the most part. So, so there are practical aspects to this, but generally speaking, you don't recoil from people anymore at all, which is really nice because then you just feel love. So I don't know if I've even answered your question. I might have went way off on a tangent. Resistance to meditation. I don't know if it's resistance to meditation. I might look more into resistance to deepening your insight, to letting go. And often it might be, you think it might be a fear that if you let go, you're letting go of some kind of coping mechanism or distance or something that helps you filter out other people's energy. But that's actually the opposite. The deeper you let go, the more you don't need to filter out anything, including other people's energy. Hopefully that landed and I wasn't completely on a tangent. Jack. Whoa. There we go. Okay. When I do self-inquiry, unless I hold the thought, be vigilant, and notice thoughts as they emerge, I get overwhelmed and lost in long streams of thought. That's okay for now. At some point, you have to recognize that that belief itself is also a thought. The belief that I have to hold a certain thought or certain perspective, or else I just get lost in thought. I know that's a sneaky one, but it is one. It itself is also a thought or a perception or a belief. Just keep at it. For you, something more like a one-pointed approach may be really valuable. Like moo. What is moo? Because you can use that energy, you have a lot of mental energy, which is fine. You're probably a very smart person or whatever. But what that does, one-pointed approaches allow you and facilitate you to hone that energy of mind down into a fine point to where you don't move from something. You hold on very, very tightly to that one anything. It could be a word. What happens is the one-pointed approach becomes just a point. It doesn't have to be any word or anything or any thought or anything. It's just one point. It's one point. You become focused in a sense, in a very real sense, but not focused on a belief or a thought or processing information. Focused at one point in consciousness. That may be valuable for you, a way to go at this. But otherwise, just keep doing what you're doing. The mind will calm down at some point. And or you'll get frustrated and the mind will stop. Or you'll see through a belief structure that's kind of giving you a life raft, and you just push it aside and you'll just drop in. Keep the intention to wake up. Keep the intention to touch into and realize your true nature, whatever that is to you. You may not use that word, but okay. Oh, also look into the belief I'm overwhelmed by thoughts. Thoughts are overwhelming to me. What that does is tends to make a little distance between thoughts and what we're perceiving as ourself. And the distance is what is the relationship of mind identification. Because there's no problem with a thought. It's made out of consciousness. There's no problem with consciousness. There's no problem with you. You're also made out of consciousness in this way we're speaking. So when it's all just consciousness, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't care. I don't care if there's a thought there or not. It doesn't matter. Because I am. I am. Before Abraham was, I am. Okay. Robert. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm long past the honeymoon. Yeah. And the subtleties of the shadow reactivity work good. And unbound consciousness are such gifts. Good. Yeah. Good for you. It's a nice place to be. I always tell people, stay alert. Even in very deep stage realization, Avasana can surface. But once you've done equanimity work, and especially if your activities essentially dissolved, then you don't care. You're just like, okay, bring it on. I'd rather see it. I want to see it. I want to feel something uncomfortable. Why not? Okay. Life with Kyle. Any advice for finding one's fixations? Well, my belief chapter in my book and my emotions chapter, I think mostly addresses it. But you can ask yourself questions like, what am I holding on to? Very generally, like in life. What am I afraid to let go of? What am I afraid to let go of? What scares me? Let's go there. If you trust a trusted friend or colleague or teacher, ask them. They may or may not want to tell you, but they might. I'd be careful depending on who you ask, because some people could be not clear themselves. But if you have a good teacher or something, and you can ask those kinds of questions. You can also just ask the question: is there a fixation I need to see to let go more, to drop into more clarity? Ask the question with your heart and then let it go. Don't think about it. Just let it go. It might come in a day or a week or a month. Ashley, fear of loss of control. Yeah. Sean, recently I've been noticing barriers between myself and others. Okay. I kind of talked about this earlier. I would listen to that portion. This is more pronounced between those I love the most. Yeah. Very interesting thing we find that I found is the identity or the ego is not one thing. It's a collection of various intentions, fears, ideas, judgments, but it culminates in like two levels of our identity. One is our persona, or maybe our identity in regards to casual acquaintances and friends. And then we have a different identity structure that has a different set of rules, principles, behaviors, proclivities, fears, especially emotional things like fears. Has a whole different set, and I'm going to call it the identity that gets turned on or expresses itself when we're in an emotional connection with someone, often a romantic connection or close family members or children, like our children. So our family members, that just have a different set of rules to the way we feel, the way we act, what we can and can't control about our behavior. And interesting that, yeah, we can have even surprisingly more barriers around those we're closer to. Yeah, it requires some vulnerability to address this distance thing. If you really trust somebody you're close to, you can tell them, you know, but just own it all yourself. Just say, listen, I don't think this has anything to do with you at all. I just want to say it to be honest and actually, because maybe you can help me by just listening or being a reflection. But I feel like a barrier around you sometimes. Now, and again, it's not you. I really don't think it's anything you're doing. I think it's me. It's just my conditioning, and I've felt it with other people I'm close to. I don't need to do anything with it or about it, and it's fine. It doesn't. I'm not suggesting it needs to change. Our relationship needs to change or anything, but I'm just curious about it in my own self, and I want to unpack it. You know, and sometimes you just feel into it, and it's like, oh, I'm afraid of losing this person. It's actually fear, or could be a lot of things. But that's one way to work with it, is like relationally, but you don't have to do it that way either. You can kind of use the suggestions I already made. Like, do I have a fear of intimacy? And if so, why? Where did that get shaped in my life? Hey, John. Good to see you. Is there any way to help my partner who worries that they are losing me to all this all consuming passion? It's a great question, actually. I've addressed this a few times before, and it's a really good question. First of all, it's good that you're able to talk about that. They were able to verbalize it to you, right? So it's not a unexamined or repressed situation. Um, just talk through it. Just say, this process is probably the most, well, I don't know how you would say it. I would say it like this process is the most important part of my life, but it's that way because it includes all parts of my life. I don't have to pick and choose about anything as long as, you know, I'm congruent with my own truth and with you and everyone else I'm close to. What that means to you is not a bad thing. It doesn't, it's not like you have to compete with my spirituality or something because again, it's all of life for me. It's just everything, including you. So it's not like a direct correlation or competitive element. I would maybe tell them that because some people they consider it like, oh, I'm playing second fiddle to like as if it's another person. Just say you're the most important person if it's true. You're the central person in my life as far as my partnership, and I have tremendous love and respect for you, and just be really honest and vulnerable. But the spiritual aspect of my life is it's just something that takes a lot of my time and takes a lot of my energy, but it doesn't have to take away from you or our relationship. It will. I have faith in the truth that it will deepen our relationship, and it usually does, to be honest. Now, occasionally I'll come across somebody, and you're probably not in this situation. I really doubt you are, but I'll come across somebody where their partner gets so threatened by it, especially early on, that they kind of manipulate them into not doing it. I don't want you going to that stuff or reading those books, or I've seen that more than a handful of times, and that's kind of annoying. Sad. Just feel bad for that person, and that's generally I would say that's not really a relationship based in true mutual support, trust, and letting the other person grow as they need to. You know what I mean? I've seen that a few times. That's a much more challenging one. And I just tell the person, like, at some point, you probably are going to have to be fully congruent and authentic with yourself and your life and your partner if you really want to be free. I would think you're going to have to get there. Now, maybe you wait it out sometimes and the partner comes around. I've also seen that in surprising ways, but you can't choose that. It'll happen or it won't. And just being as authentic, honest as you can, and don't make excuses. Not excuses. Don't make it sound like justifications, but just be direct and be like, this, I'm not going to pretend this isn't where my heart is. Right. That's about the way I would say it. Rolandito, can you please help me understand the difference between a feeling and an emotion? Well, it depends what you mean. So a lot of times when people ask about terminology and definitions, I hesitate to answer just because honestly, I can even use them differently in different settings. And I try to always state the context in which I'm using terms. But when someone else uses the terms, I have no idea what they're asking exactly. I have a reasonable assumption that you and I are talking about the same thing when you use the word emotion. But when you use the word feeling, I'm not sure what that is to you. I don't know what you mean by that because I can use those words very interchangeably, a feeling and an emotion. Now, if you're talking about a physical sensation, I usually don't use the word feeling. I try to use the word sensation to be clear about that. So if you want to tell me a little more about what you're asking or like what your experience of those terms is, that'd be helpful, I think. Amargita, you often say no hesitation. Can you say more about what hesitation is pointing to? I would just ask yourself, instead of me talking it to you or just saying it to you or something or giving you my experience, I would encourage you, if it's an interesting topic, an interesting thing or part of this, I would encourage you to, sorry, I'm just moving my screen around, to investigate it yourself and ask yourself, do I feel hesitation in life? When do I feel hesitation? What does it feel like? Am I pre-planning everything I say to people? Am I imagining what's going to happen 1 minute before I walk into a room? Right? Sometimes we have an addiction to the illusion that we're going to be in control of things if we anticipate them and think about them. And that can bring about us with that kind of anticipation and preoccupation with our inner world. We have to be hesitant, right? We have to always stand back just a little bit. Standing back from life just a little bit all the time, all day long. I think a lot of people do that. I think it's common to just stay back a little bit. To not do that is wonderful. It's very, very freeing, right? And that's maybe the most salient aspect of awakening right after is this just spontaneity, not holding back from anything because, well, I never was really, but I don't even have to entertain the thought of it because it's absurd. There's nothing to hold back from. There's no one to do the holding back. Just everything is just here. So simple, pure being, right? So I would look into your own experience and see what it's about in the way I described. Lava light. I suspect that my innate ability to suspend disbelief, okay, suspend disbelief, stop not believing. That's what suspend disbelief means, which has been useful in a plethora of ways, is useful as a tool. Yeah, I think it is. Or as a willingness to let go of limiting beliefs. Well, the downside is I think it's important to have discernment in the relative sense. It makes sense, right? In the relative world, some things are more true than others, right? That's what relative means. So discernment's important, but when it comes to this, when it comes to asking a question and is dropping into your immediate experience right now, then I would suspend all beliefs. Don't worry about beliefs. Don't worry about thoughts. Just let go. And when that aspect, the absolute aspect, is realized, it'll be very obvious. If maybe it's already happened, I don't know. But from that place, there's no need to talk about better, worse, true or not true. It just doesn't have to do with those. The relative world does, right? There's a proper fuel to put in your vehicle, for instance. Put the wrong one in, there's going to be consequences. So I don't think it's as much about trying to figure out what's true or not true or less true or more true in the relative world as much as seeing that what we're talking about here is not more of the same when it comes to the relative world that's laden with beliefs. Because the relative world only exists in your mind. And there's a bunch of other minds, let's say, that go into complicity about what that means, what the relative world is and what's important and not important. But it does have it is bound by a set of rules and laws, right? That govern the truth that if you don't have good discernment, you can get yourself into bad situations. You can lose money, you can whatever, trust people you shouldn't trust. But to plunge, to wake up, to use a one-pointed approach, to go where self-inquiry is supposed to point you, you don't need discernment. You can suspend everything, all beliefs. Tomorrow never knows. Can you talk about the practice of offering compassion to others and how to avoid creating an identity around being the selfless one? Good question. Mostly, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to practical, how to be a better person, how to think better, how to calm the mind, how to improve your operating system, how to be a kinder person, more compassionate, more successful, all of that stuff, all of it. I usually say I'm disinclined to give any specific advice. I'm rather than just wake up, keep waking up. It really does take care of itself. Specifically compassion. Because you can think you're really compassionate and you're not. Or you can act in a compassionate way, but that act is sort of reinforcing distorted belief structures about yourself. And that's just entanglement. It's enmeshment there. Waking up is what clarifies that. And then at some point, it's almost all acts are acts of compassion on some level. But it's not a big deal. Like it may just be being silent at the right moment and speaking at the right moment, smiling at the right moment, picking up someone's pain when you feel it and hear it, just like recognizing it. How you move, it affects how you move, it affects everything. Compassion. But insight is what really leads to deepening compassion. Lava light. Life with Kyle. I'm afraid to let go of thoughts. I know. At least you're aware of it. A lot of people aren't. They want to know more and more and more and more about spirituality, and they ask me very technical spiritual questions. And I'm like, oh man, you gotta let go of that stuff. You gotta let go of it, because I think it's really just seeing that we're holding on to thoughts as a safety mechanism, because it makes us feel like we're in the known. We're afraid of the unknown. But so for me, it was just seeing that the known, the way I was engaging the known and taking identity from it was causing me to suffer every single time, no matter how I did it. No matter how I approached it, it was just causing suffering. Then I was more ready to go into the unknown. So just keep looking at what's happening. Look at what works and what doesn't work. See if thinking your way out of pain works. Kate, you're back. If there's time, can you talk about feeling into the I am sense? Sure. We can do the I am sense at the end. Never been clear to me. What is it? Violet. Hello, Violet. How was your plane flight? Sean, you're welcome. Bob. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your questions or comments or comments. You're welcome, Amara Gita. Tony, post-liberation, is there any inclination that the whole is greater than the sum? The whole of what? What do you mean by that? I would say, yeah, I'm inclined to say yes, but I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Rui? Tell me if I said your name right. If I didn't, I apologize. I've not seen that name before. Good afternoon. Sorry for being late. From Boston. Awesome. Food. I think of Boston, I think of Faneuil Hall, and I think of good food. Oh, Tony, okay. Of its parts, i.e., there's some version of God or overseeing intelligence. Is there some version of God or overseeing intelligence? I sometimes use I would say I'm hesitant to tell people like anything about God. True, not true, yes, no. Because it's like discover it for yourself. Is what I prefer to encourage people to do. Is there some version of intelligence? Yeah. There's a brilliance and an intelligence to these appearances. Fascinates me. But it's not any kind of, it's prajna wisdom. A Buddhist would like balk at the idea of intelligence, and yet they'll say prajna wisdom, right? Transcendent wisdom. There's transcendent wisdom that's operating. Bunky used to say, everything is perfectly managed in the unborn. Brilliant. There's a brilliance to all of this, but it's not in the way the human mind can understand it. It's just not. Doesn't have to do with cause and effect. Doesn't have to do with anything you think you want, or it's non-linear. It's not in time. It's not time bound or space bound. It's brilliant. The sun, the light of 1,000 suns. Jan, my book, The Identity Structure is a Movement of Mind. It is. So fear is a thought which results in body sensations like bottom lines. Thank you. You're welcome. Chris, in your book, you mention it is not uncommon to have a powerful awakening that may even last months and then to lose it. Did I say you lose an awakening? You'll feel like you lost it. You'll feel unenlightened for sure. Any pointers to get it back? You'll never get it back. No, you won't get it back. There's nothing to get back. Look around you. Feel right now. What's the truth of this? What's the truth of you right now? It's not in time. There's no past. Do you see a past? Do you see a past right now? What is the nature of past? What is the nature of future? If you think there's a past, and you by thinking about it, because there's a memory, a thought, why can't you reach into the past? So it's not so much getting the awakening back as honoring what was realized through presence, through continuing inquiry. Is there a past or future right now? Where am I? Where's the sense of I? See a thought as a thought. Continue to disidentify. If a thought catches you that says, oh, I had an awakening, that's the thought. Now what? Disregard the thought and what's left. It's the loudest thing here. Pronounce, oh, good. Portuguese name. Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. Good. Okay. Mauricio. Okay. See ya. Thanks for coming. You feel it. Yes. Yes. Good. Good. No past. Yes. Yes. Love it. 2:30. Okay. We answered every question. Oh my goodness. The I am sense. Yeah. So for you, Kate, the only thing I'll say is the I am sense is not the phrase I am. It's not a word I am, and it's not a thought I am. It's none of those things, right? You know that. You understand what I'm saying with that? Okay, good. So if you understand that, can you put your attention where it feels like you are right now? And I don't mean imagine where you are or think about a narrative about where you are or imagine the room you're in or imagine a body. Don't do any of those things, but can you feel where you are right now? Can you put your attention right where it feels like you are? What is it? You can't know what it is in like by thoughts, but answer the question experientially will get you to the insight, which is so obvious to you, you probably overlook it all the time. More feminine energy, and others are more masculine. Yes, for sure. So, okay, when you say I feel like I'm behind, it feels like I'm behind my eyes. What is the nature of behind my eyes? What is that part? Everyone hopefully is doing this along with us, by the way. This isn't just a one person conversation. It's a thought, correct? Would the moment you recognize that thought, did the sense of you being where you are change? Does the thought modify that at all? Just the pure sense of you being where you are. For instance, is it there if there's no thought? So it's just there, yeah. I assume that's what you're answering. I asked about 5 questions. So there's a sense of that's the I am sense. That's it. Yes, it is for sure. 100% there without a thought. Until it's not. Okie dokie. That was easy. Okay, does anyone have any more questions? Oh, wait. So I think I scrolled past a question. Practices that are more feminine energy. Boy, that's a little bit hard to answer. I feel, but again, it's you may have to watch some videos I made on consciousness in my consciousness playlist to get the feel of where I'm pointing. But I feel when you're experiencing as a practice, unbound consciousness as a practice, which is essentially the I am sense. with a bit of more emphasis than pure I am sense, a bit more emphasis on the movement of consciousness, which are seamless. They have to be seamless, or you haven't realized either one, really, right? But so the movements of consciousness where thoughts kind of start to form and then just disform before they become anything, and it never leaves the I am sense, that pure consciousness, that unbound consciousness. That kind of practice to me feels quite in the feminine aspect. Also, natural meditation, you could say, is a little bit more in the feminine aspect. Hold all this lightly, though, for real. Like, there's other ways to interpret this stuff, but we're all along for the ride. Yeah, you know it. Ryu, any suggestions on how to disentangle from the I thought? First of all, I would say make sure the illusions of reactivity, the illusion of separation, duality, subject, object, form are, if those aren't clarified, the I am sense isn't going to disappear. Probably it could, but I I don't think so. Usually, it takes some clarity before that's going to just stop. Like Nisargadatta said, if you regress properly, the I am sense will disappear. Now, generally speaking, though, all of the stuff I talk about is disentangling identity from essentially thought. So if you call I a thought, I'm not even sure identity really is entangled with the I thought so much as it's entangled with the sense of being an agent, a reactive agent in the thought space initially. That's what it feels like to be a mind identified self. Feels like there's a world, I'm in the world, I'm doing stuff in that world, and it's all really important stuff, and I have to think about it all. And there's other people, and it's just thought, 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 thought. But we're holding on to this like relational tendency toward thought, holding that standing wave in consciousness of the thinker that we don't see, but the sense of being a thinker and the thoughts. And that underlying sense of separation in thought is punctuated by all of the textures of thought, the not textures, but the content of thoughts. That's why it feels so real, that inner world, that dialogue, that narrative, until it doesn't. So that's that. From then on, from even before awakening, as I'm talking about disentangling ourselves or what it feels like ourselves from thought, that's the work of realization. But if we're talking about deep stage realization where the I thought literally just stops, the I sense stops, that's different. But you can always investigate I, the sense of I, just like I did with Kate. It's always valuable, as long as you don't make a cognitive project of it. I sometimes notice myself distracting myself from this and practice. Yeah. Even though it's the most important thing to me, but it feels like there's nothing I can do but let it play out. Yeah. It's true. It's true. When we see how much we distract ourselves and kind of, I don't know about waste time. You can't really waste time, but we burn up a lot of energy trying to keep an inner world going. We know it. We just feel it like it's just unnecessary, right? It feels unnecessary. Don't beat yourself up over it, though. It's fine. It has to play itself out to various degrees. That's where you find the sweet spot, right? The middle way between just completely ignoring the fact that we're in la la land, and being so rigid with yourself that you're either abusing yourself or you're staying mind identified through addiction to knowledge or something. There's a sweet spot there. My first live stream has been very helpful. Oh, good. Strong transmission. Good. Thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you came. Jonathan, thanks for coming. We'll do more. What we do in the shadows. I like that. Cool. You're welcome, Frank. John. I feel like there's no sense of I am, but there is identity. The I is a useful character. Yeah. It's again, man, it really depends on what we're talking about. These words can mean so many different things. Subtly different experiences or vastly different experiences. Yeah. Matthew. Ended with guided pointing. All brilliant. Thank you, Angelo. You're welcome. I will. I'll keep the chapters coming. Ben Jojo. The backgrounds are good. Good. I'm glad you like them. I have fun with them. Occasionally, someone will say they're distracting, or they don't like them, or they're bored with, or what? Not bored. They just say they're distracting, or don't like them. But the majority of the comments I get are either I really do like them, or like neutral, I suppose. But like I said, it's art. You got to do what you got to do, and know some people will not like it. You're welcome, Gene. You're welcome. Online retreat. I am very much looking forward to it. It's going to be a blast. You're welcome. I'm glad you came. Thank you, everyone, for all of your comments and questions. So good. Great questions. I'll get this uploaded here before too long. It was a blast. Love you all. Thanks for coming. I admire your dedication to digging in. It reduces suffering among humans. Sometimes very slowly, it seems, but it does help a lot. Of course. It's worth it. It's worth the effort and frustration and effortlessness. If we meet for Zoom, if we meet for Zoom, everyone should know this. If we meet for Zoom, you have to look in the community tab, because I'll have to put the Zoom invite in the community tab. So always watch the community tab for announcements. That's the only way I know how to send. I can't send direct messages to you guys. Not that I see. Maybe they'll do it in the future, but you're welcome all. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Amber. Thanks, Life with Kyle, Rolandito, Lava Light, Patrick, Jack, John. You guys are awesome. It's been a blast. Went by so fast. Feels like 5 minutes to me. Crazy. Seriously. Amazing. Thank you all. Bye, Max. Grover is awesome. It does go by fast. Crazy how fast it goes. Okay. Thank you. Y'all have a wonderful weekend. Shovel snow. After shovel snow. Right. I'm going to hug the dogs for sure. They were so good. They were chilling out the whole time. I kind of ran them a little bit and went out in the backyard, played a lot. I got a lot of energy out. So when we did this, I figured they would chill. And they did. They did a good job.